This is your 702.
Let's walk the talk this summer.
So as I said, it is the sex focus, and we're speaking about weaponizing sex. Elvis, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for coming into studio. Good morning.
Good morning, and thank you for having me.
Happy New Year.
Oh, yeah. Is this the second day of the year,
It
right?
It is. And I think it's okay to say Happy New Year the second day of the year, right?
I know, right?
Okay, but I think when does it stop for you? Because we've been having this conversation too.
I don't really care, man. You could say this to me in February, it's fine.
There's people that said they say it all the way to December.
You know what I mean? It's
All right. Elvis, this conversation that we're having now, the use of sex as a weapon in relationships, it can be very tricky in many relationships where sex is weaponized, sex is used as a transaction, a tool of transaction. When does one know that sex may be weaponized in their marriage, in their relationship?
actually, thanks for this question. It's December, it's just after the holidays, right?
Yeah.
And people are starting to feel, their pockets run dry, right? This is the perfect time to start knowing whether it is being weaponized against you or not. Because I think what we have seen over the years is that the less you have, it is an indication of something going wrong. And so it's sort of used as a reward or punish, a sort of behavioral modification tactic, right? So if, for example, you wake up today and wondering, when is the next time I'm going to have it? And what conditions are going to be set out for me, then actually this sex is being weaponized against you. So you feel the weight in the approach, you feel the weight in the execution, and you also almost feel that lingering feeling just afterwards, like, hey man, something's not right here.
Yeah. A request is going to follow soon.
You definitely know. Maybe a request has preceded the event already. But sometimes you're also starting to think that actually, maybe before any request is made, there are significant conversations that could be had that we haven't had. But those conversations trigger other things that would take the sex away. Or in the event that you maybe have outlived or outdone yourself in other aspects of life, then, man, it comes as a bouquet. It's like roses for you. It's like, well done, You may not realize how bad this is if it's only used to reward you. You only notice when it's used to punish you. So you realize that reward and punish are two sides of the same coin, right? They're basically meant to modify undesired behavior. So you are the subject the whole time. You are facing the end of the brute where if you do well, get it. If you don't do well,
None for you.
You just might not get it. The funny thing is that we might think that this is sort of new, right? But let me take you back a little bit into history, right? This might be fun. During the Renaissance period, or the post-Renaissance, there's a popular story, right, of Madame de Beau in France, right? Then she uses sex as choice, right? She decides, actually, she doesn't want to stick to one man.
Okay.
At that time, sex was regulated primarily through family, through religion, and whatnot. So she decides, in that instant, she may be what we call the modern-day slave queen. So she wants to have more than one person. But the person she was with in the beginning starts to feel like, oh no, she's giving my sex to somebody else.
Sure.
And the more she gave to other people, the less he got. But he was wealthy. So the more she gave him, the more wealth he gave her.
Okay. So it became it was transactional.
So in a way, it became transactional. But she realized she could get more money or more wealth from other people. And then she started getting, the more sex she gave away, the more wealthier she became. And people realized they were being used at some point, so they took it away. And then she suffered destitution and eventually passed on through suicide, right? What I'm trying to say in this instance is that rewarding or punishing someone using sex almost always has had fatal consequences. What I'm saying in this is that at the end of the day, how you choose to use sex to reward or to punish, then it will somewhat trigger in other people responses that may not favor your position. In the event that you're in a long-term relationship, for example, and then you've used sex as a barometer to measure how things are going, and you've also used sex to reward and punish, the effect in a long-term relationship might become resentment. So people start to pull away.
Yes.
And as they start to pull away, it could lead to the end of that marriage, or they become super jealousy. They want to know, besides the person you're giving, who else are you giving it to, that they have less.
And is this because they think that you use it as a way to reward and punish in other parts of your life as well?
If it can be done, then it can be replicated, right? But beyond that, because in a long-term relationship, people feel the security of having it more than once or more than often, right? So they don't count how much they have it, but they count how much they don't have it.
Okay.
So when it starts to feel like something is not going right and it's less and less, and it's only after certain things have happened, people sit back and start to look, besides me, where else is my person getting it, or who else are they giving it to? And in that, instead of modifying that person's behavior you're punishing with sex, they start to look around and fish and probably start surveilling you, your whereabouts, your movements. And almost always it doesn't end well.
And how does using sex as this tool or weapon affect the quality of the act? So, whether it's more sensual at certain times, whether it feels more like a chore at certain times, whether people are immersed, you feel that your partner is more immersed in it when there's something to gain.
So maybe it's a sick mindset to start with, to think that you could actually, let's use the right word, manipulate someone with sex. So depending on the specifics of that relationship, maybe giving more, being more sensual, being endearing, being out of the box thinking, sometimes shows in a way how the person who's given the sex as a sort of reward is doing it, going, let's use the word extra mile, to prove that actually they've done something well, right? The challenge with this is that it's not sustainable, right? But for it to be sustainable, it now has to be conditioned. There has to be times set. There has to be certain milestones won, right? For the same performance to continue. The challenge is that sex is sometimes a hormonal issue. Sometimes it's a feelings issue. Sometimes it's a moment issue, right? And if those are not aligned, that performance, that superstar performance may not come. So regardless of how they may think, or the one partner thinks that actually they're going to reward and they're going to outperform themselves, the body may not say it right. And then signs of there's something here starts to show. In the event that nothing happens and it's all glory and stuff, there's always that satisfaction, deep satisfaction in the receiving party that actually this person's gone out of their way. So it becomes a symbiotic sort of relationship. You do for me, I do for you. You do for me, I do for you. And in that sense, in some instances, it becomes motivating. The challenge, though, if it becomes motivating, it becomes the high that you're chasing. So if then you don't meet your expectations, maybe their performance or your performance, then there's a downside to it. Like, after all this hype, we could only do so much or so little. So the anticlimax always osmos lingers.
And what can one do when they realize that sex is being used against them or as a tool in the relationship. I mean, especially for people who maybe feel that, I enjoy the sex and I like the fact that I'm getting this from my partner or from my spouse. And even though I can see that she or he's using it to manipulate me, I'll go along with it because I like the sex.
So maybe it is important to look at the kind of relationships where manipulation like this happens. These are not healthy relationships. So healthy in the sense that there may be violence in this relationship. And this violence might be financial, might be psychological. So in the event that this violence is occurring, right, the moment where you start to reward or to punish, you're trying to modify a certain behavior that you're not really good with or that you're not, happy with. And instead of addressing that behavior in general, you start using sex to reward, right? Let's say, for example, it's a discordant couple, an estranged couple, right? In this instance, it's a long-term relationship, and there's security that they don't face that someone is going to walk away anytime soon. So they have other barriers that prevent them from walking away. But in the event that it's based on punishing you, for example, you went out on 31st and you didn't come home, and you only came home like today on the 2nd, and then there's not going to be sex for the next week or the next 1 month or however long it takes until something else happens or until your apology is met with maybe a financial need that you meet. In that instance, after a particular behavior, the sex is withdrawn. Say there's a confrontation at home and it involves something silly like the kitchen, somebody didn't wipe the counter. That conversation that ensues afterwards, then automatically that sex is going to be withdrawn. So now you start looking at your person and try to avoid any kind of conflict. And in trying to walk on eggshells in a relationship, sometimes it works out. You drag it for as long as you can, but it's also not sustainable. Because at some point you start thinking, I'm overdoing my beat here and I'm getting very little returns out of it. Maybe because you love the person, you stick around, but almost always you start to replace that you don't get. So everybody else supplements what they're not getting at home. So they replace.
Then they step out.
It's almost always instantaneous that the less you get and the feeling that you're thinking, man, I'm being used here, you start getting it out unreservedly elsewhere.
Sure. So this might even result in infidelity in relationships.
It's actually a driver for infidelity. It pushes you right into the arms of the next person because you realize you have to do so much for you to get a fix. And it's not an addiction that you keep going back to because you start also rating the quality that you're getting. And sometimes it's not the best.
So this is the quality of the sex.
Yeah. In a long-term relationship, it's not just sex, right? It's just the intimacy that comes with it. It's the before care and the after care, right? It's the, give me a hug, give me a kiss in the house. All of those things disappear because now they're being used to reward you or as punishment for you. So now when you step out, things are a little bit different. It comes more naturally. You don't have to spend so much for you to get it. Then you start comparing what it's worth. Sometimes people then start thinking of family. They have children. They have mortgages together. So they stick it to it. But those that feel like, I've wasted enough of my time, they just walk. Then that's the end of a relationship. In a good way, that relationship ends. In a bad way, then physical violence starts because people started demanding, I got married to you, therefore I'm entitled to this. Or you did something, therefore I'm entitled to this. Then it becomes more violent. That's the sad part of it. Walking away is a little bit easier because there's no violence in it. But once it turns out violent, then things change. The game sort of is being rigged in a way that somebody has figured it out. And the metering and violence is a solution to that problem.
We're unpacking using sex as a weapon in relationships. Is sex being used as such in your relationship? Are you experiencing or have you experienced circumstances or instances where sex is withheld, from you in your relationship, and only if you do something or you say something or you be something, then you are rewarded with sex? And how have you gone about doing that? Or are you that person who weaponizes sex in your relationship? Do you withhold, for whatever reason, and only, give, in or agree to be intimate with your partner once you've had your way? I want to hear from you. 011 883 0702. 0727021702. My guest is Elvis Munatswa, who is co-founder of Urban Psychologists and Sexologists, and he is helping us make sense of this, how to navigate it and how to identify when sex is being weaponized in your relationship. And sometimes we are not always innocent. Sometimes people weaponize without even realizing it. But I want to read a WhatsApp here. Someone here saying, "Hi Kgomotso, I've been married for over 21 years. My husband is stone cold. We hardly have sex. We have had sex once in the past 12 months. My husband prefers sitting alone, stays up late just to avoid me. He comes to bed when I'm fast asleep. I'm a beautiful woman, fit and healthy. I'm starting to resent being married to him, and it's painful."
There's a lot to unpack there. And the quality of that relationship is extremely questionable. When people withdraw sex, it may mean that part of their life needs are not met. And intimate needs are not just in the bedroom. So, for example, you might need to consider how these people talk every day, just a simple conversation. Because in instances where sex has been withdrawn, usually the tongue has been used so recklessly. So, without judging much and with knowing very little information about this, it's quite common that when people are not careful with their tongue, they almost often emasculate men. So, and sometimes some men are not strong enough to resist this and may have a confrontation, so they recede into a shell. They might be also that the man has done things that is somewhat unsure about, and that he knows will cause problems. Therefore, intimacy allows him to be soft and open up. And in that instance, that opening up might lead to him exposing himself. And once he exposes himself, he knows that there's no aftercare, there's no considerations given afterwards. Therefore, for him to avoid all that, he uses sex as maintenance of the relationship. By maintenance, I mean once a month, once every few months, or whenever it becomes a subject of conversation, so that the relationship does not itself die, but there's nothing to it, to that relationship.
So is the idea that this is just enough to keep us going?
Yeah, it's just maintenance. It's like my car needs a wash every week. I'm going to wash this car, but it's parked, right? So it's like until we have the language to confront each other without bruising each other, then we have the conversation. But for now, you're going to get this little piece. There's a lot going on in that relationship. It could be about finances. It could be about personal fulfillment. It could be, there's so many things going on. But one of the things that I may speak on maybe is that the fact that she goes to bed is she addressed this conversation and say, actually I want more. Because sometimes desire and ability meets at a point where it meets, then the frequency is high. So you have people that are hyperactive, right, or hypersexual that want to have more, and then you have people that are naturally hyper that want to have less, right? So maybe sometimes it's not even about punishing or rewarding. It's about the mismatch, about someone's sexual behavior. Someone who's hyper, versus someone who's hypo, right? So those needs to be sort of synced, and then
I'm so interested in Anonymous and all the details. There's so many questions that I think we have for her. Number one, has she raised this with her husband? And what does he say when she speaks to him about it? But has their sex life always been shaky? I mean, she says they've been married for 21 years.
It's a long time.
It's a long time. And for how long have things been in this state? I'm so interested. Anonymous, I really hope you can give us more information. In fact, if you can, give us a call. We'd love to hear from you. We've got more questions for you. Someone commenting on that saying, but the husband must also be having sexual problems.
Could be.
It could be that they're having problems, no?
Could be. Look, we can't also run away from sexual dysfunction. So sexual dysfunction in men almost always result in them not being able to perform. And this could be various reasons. You could be diabetic. You could have other chronic conditions. Look, we could speculate as much as we can, right? But the fundamental that this is a conversation that they may not have had, or there's a conversation that they have had that Anonymous may not have shared. Because, let me give you an example, like a weird example. People may not like my example, but if you remember the case of Johnny Depp and Amber Heard, and Johnny Depp said to Amber, I will not look at your face in your eyes at any point. We watched months of them being in court, and he never did. So some people take vows seriously. So you might have breached a vow, and somebody says to you, actually, this is never going to happen ever again, right? In that moment, it might be important to go back to what started this behavior. And then once we figured out what started this behavior, what is maintained as behavior, because people change. People adopt certain positions because of the information available to them. But if this information is debunked or they get more information, they soften on that position. But it seems this relationship, the position is hardened over time, meaning there's certain things that could have happened within this 12 years maybe that haven't happened.
We're talking sex, and we're talking about using it as a weapon in relationships.
702.
WhatsApp us on 072 702 1702.
Good morning, Kgomotso, and to your guest there. I've been married for about 14 years, and I've realized that coming to the deed is conditional. So in the beginning of our relationship, everything was going well, and there was no issues. But then I realized that when I said no to certain things, and when I request certain things, actually all things that I request, it needs to be negotiated. But anything that she requests must be done. So if I say yes, everything will be well. If I say no, then it's negotiations which will always tend up to be a toxic place to be in. So from then, I decided that, you know what, I'm going to stand my ground. And the moment I tried to, I did that, we were totally different people. And that moment of silence made me realize that I had lost myself for many years. So.
Sure. Yeah, we're talking about using sex as a weapon in relationships. This is the Sex Focus on the Clement Manyathela Show. My name is Kgomotso Modise, and I'm in for Clem this morning. My guest is Elvis Munatswa, and he is co-founder of Urban Psychologists and Sexologists, and he joins us now in studio. Elvis, this is a perfect example of what we've been talking about.
Totally. You can hear from the gentleman that something happened. There was a turning point in this relationship where he realized that actually he was being, let's use the word, manipulated into doing certain things. And the more he did this, the more you got. When you refused, sex was withheld. So you realize that people in general, some people are not like honest, you know. In the event that they could have had a different outcome in this relationship, I think they would be in a different space now. But now that you realize that you had to do certain things, and if it was approved, so sort of sex was an approval. It was like his ratings went up or down. When they went up, it was there. When they went down, no. But then you start also thinking about the nature of that relationship, whether it was altruistic in the beginning, where they were in a relationship, in love, maybe, let's use a word, or they had gotten together based on one's ability to finance the other person's life. So when you have a relationship where you have expectations, let's use the traditional expectations that the man will take care of you, will provide for you, will protect you, will do X, Y, Z. And in the event that those things are not met, and then the outcome is that you withdraw sex. See, there's always something in these relationships that I find fascinating, but not in a good way. Fascinating in the sense that by the time they realize that something is going on, the damage that has been done is so much that it almost becomes irreversible.
Yeah.
So maybe just to drill into sexology a little bit. Sex is a learned behavior, right? And if it's a learned behavior, basically it means the more you do it, it becomes almost automated. Your body responds to it the more frequently you do. Now, in the event that there is resistance to it, your body starts to want it less with that person. So maybe let me introduce here a concept called the whiskey penis.
The
Whiskey
whiskey penis.
Yeah. So basically, when you think about sex, you get aroused. And the moment you want to have it, you're no longer aroused. The arousal fades. Because it is the interaction between what you want and how you have received aftercare from that person.
Okay.
So, and now this is somewhat systematic. If you've been denied more times than you can count, then your body naturally, every time you have an encounter, now you have sexual dysfunction. So sexual dysfunction now starts to happen because you have an unmet need. And when that need is somewhat met, there's conditions to it that somewhat emasculate you. So the barometer that you used to measure for how good it was now becomes the same you used to measure how bad it is, right? Because now, like I said, it's learned behavior, right? You learn how to do it and you learn how to perfect it. Now you start to unlearn. And once you start to unlearn, it also becomes automatic, right? That no matter how much you try, nothing will actually happen. So a system of reward and punish ultimately results in sexual dysfunction. And when it results in sexual dysfunction, it becomes difficult to have it as a confrontation because instead of getting better, it actually gets worse. So that thing of resentment starts to grow, and it grows almost automatically. And it becomes a lot more difficult somewhat to resolve it. Even in sex therapy, it becomes one of those challenging issues because then no matter if you fix the relationship, you haven't fixed the sex in the relationship. So the relationship might even flourish, but the sex might be gone forever.
We're unpacking using sex as a weapon in relationships. Let's take some more of your voice notes.
Hi, Kgomotso and fellow listeners. Happy New Year. This topic really touches me because it feels like my story is being discussed here. but in a different way, because we have other medical conditions that comes into play sometimes. So my question is this: sex not only being an act, it's something of a connection. The body needs to be ready, the mind also needs to be ready. So how do we differentiate when the withdrawal of sex is genuine, not a manipulation?
I don't know if I heard him correct. If he said it's a condition that they are going through. I'm presuming a health condition.
Yeah. So I think I heard the same. But maybe to answer his question, how do you differentiate between it being healthy and being unhealthy?
Yes.
So when it's healthy, there's a conversation that you're having. Hey, consider this. I have high blood pressure, for example. I'm taking medication or whatever the condition is. So for a limited period of time, I may not be able to engage, right? So that's the first conversation. Now, in that conversation, nothing else gets taken away from the intimacy. You still cuddle, you still do the things that you used to do before. So basically the relationship remains the same, just without the intercourse. Okay. Now, when it's being used, everything else gets frozen out. So there's no intimacy, there's no... You have dry texts, and you also have dry conversations. And you see some things become more difficult to do in the household. I think in this conversation, we've also focused on long-term relationships as if this is only limited to those. But also in short-term relationships, this is quite common that people withhold sex for gain, right? So, for example, if it's in a transactional relationship, you might have to outperform yourself to get X amount of rewards, right? Or if you don't outperform yourself to a certain level, then the rewards don't come, right? So maybe to put this into perspective, we might need to consider that, like, outside of fantasy and techniques, people have actually started counting to what does this benefit me if I continue engaging. Unlike this gentleman who is talking about medical conditions, in instances where people are counting, what would this benefit me if I engage, then they start also to sort of create a timeline that if I want X, then I need to have sexual encounters that reach that level. And if I want Y, then I have to also, scale this up. Mm. The challenge with that is that if you're receiving it and it's good, you can't tell. Mm. If it's really good and you're enjoying this, you can't tell. Mm. You only tell when it just feels like there's something missing.
Yeah.
And maybe we might need to learn a skill of doing it so good that people don't realize there's something missing.
They can't tell the difference.
Yeah. But because we can tell, a good thing from a bad thing. Sometimes we engage in bad things, not because we don't know, but there's a thrill to it. But once you take off that thrill, there's nothing that sustains it, right? And like I said before, there's a thing called desire, right? So now maybe there's another thing we may need to include in this in terms of attractiveness, right? In social market value, right? Say, for example, a person X is considered in the sexual market of high value, which means there are people outside yourself that want this person, and at this point, you are with person X. Mm. Because of their market value, sexual market value, they could withhold sex, or they could give it to you based on whatever you have accomplished or not. In the event that they feel more attractive than you, for example, and you make more money, so they would discount how attractive they are because of the money that you have. Mm. And once there's a downfall to your money, that sex is gone. Mm. And it's more common lately that you might find a couple that is discordant in terms of looks, but also discordant in terms of finances, right? And then you can also see this play out.
I want to take more of our voice notes. I do see them coming in. Let's go to another one.
How's it, Dr. Kgomotso and the team there? You know, it's this thing. Argument, something else. When you go to the bedroom, so we use as a sex as a weapons, or we use the kids as a weapons to fighting. You are battling with your kids to zamo poison the kids. This is your father's do that. You know, it's very sad. I don't understand why the women they're using for this thing. Because sex is something that's coming natural. Kincho goes somewhere at the house, when they will cheat. Because all the time, is just denying. And they kill us, our men. Men is not about wake up tomorrow, say I'm going to cheat. Is there something that is wrong in the house? Even the women, there's no certainty I'm going to wake up and going to cheat for my husband. There's something behind for that. So communication is the more important part. People they don't even want to communicate. Sometimes you love someone and you want to commit and about the next tomorrow end up when there is something behind in the house. You treat me bad.
Thank you so much for that voice note. You see, I really hope many or more. I wish more of our women would be sending us voice notes and calling, because it now seems, and the risk with this conversation, that it seems it's the women always who are withholding sex, right? And I hear there from that voice note that he is speaking more about women withholding sex. But I think in transactional relationships and in all kinds of relationships, really sexual relationships, women or men can also withhold sex. We saw in the instance of the first lady who says her husband has been withholding sex from her as well.
Yeah, I mean, she says that in the year she's only had, in 12 months, she had sex once.
Yeah.
So it's an unbalanced narrative for us to consider that only men suffer from this or they're victims to this. But it is also important to look at it in the sense that where there's a problem, it doesn't really help us if we sort of nitpick, right? The challenge, though, is the data that we may have might point to the discrepancy that more women do it than men, right? Now, maybe to avoid pushing the narrative that women are doing this, there's also a downside to this, right? So, for example, some men use sex to show off, right? So they want to do it as many times as possible in different situations, also have as many kids.
Sure.
Because women are generally custodians to the reproductive health, right? So they would decide how many kids they want to have. But also some men then use that to decide how many kids they actually want to have. So if they want to have no kids at all, they withhold the sex.
Yeah.
And in the event that they might find vasectomy or using condoms difficult, they would definitely find ways of avoiding being in that house. And when this happens, on the outside, they might create also an extremely busy schedule. And most people that are busy would claim they have no time for intercourse. And now, if you've filled up your schedule with so many things to do, it almost becomes in the other person sort of automated that actually they need to save your other needs outside of the sex. Maybe you need to get your suits ready, you need to get, your overalls, your whatever clean, you need to get whatever else you need to get your job or to do whatever you need to accomplish and do it well without any distractions. Some people even go to school and study on top of a job that they have. So they only get home.
To avoid having sex with their partners.
They only come home when everybody, even the kids, is sleeping. And they leave so early in the morning because then they create a schedule which is believable. Some even get jobs outside of the province. They want to go as far as possible. So that when it's time for intimacy, it's probably once or twice in a year.
Sure. All in a bid to avoid being intimate with their partner.
You know, relationships are complex, but people would rather skip the sex instead of addressing what's wrong with their problem.
We're taking more, and I think we have a voice note from a lady, actually. So let's take a listen.
Hi, 702. I just also want to comment regarding men also withholding sex. I think with my husband, it's two reasons why he would withhold sex. I think first because I would ask him to use a condom. And when I ask him to use a condom, then he wouldn't enjoy it. And then, and it's also for medical reasons. So he would just want us to do it once in a while, almost like it's a spur of the moment. And I must let him to use a condom or not to use a condom, you know. And the second thing is just the fact that if a person comes to bed when he knows that you are really sleeping, I'm definitely gonna say no, I'm sleeping. So I think sometimes he does it just so that I say no, because he would come when he knows that I'm sleeping. Yeah.
There, that's someone else who's, it seems he's, found a way.
Of course. I mean, we replace our behavior with something else. We always, if something is gone, we find something to substitute it. And it seems in this case, this lady and the gentleman have kind of found a way where it becomes almost easy to say, actually, you came to bed when I was sleeping. So in a way...
But she's saying she's genuinely sleeping. He's the one that's coming to bed.
In a way, what I'm saying is this.
Yeah.
She has put a condition that use a condom.
Yeah.
And in a trusting relationship, it might wreak a lot of challenges in there. So, did they use condoms before? What has changed now? So, if that question is answered, then you also wonder why the gentleman doesn't want to use condoms. Going back to that whiskey penis that I used as a reference before, it becomes... Now you want to know, is he able to perform with a condom? Because some men can't.
Genuinely
cannot. So as soon as they wear a condom, sometimes the erection that they had fizzles out.
Sure.
So now, the dynamics of that relationship are interesting to find out what really is going on. But also, she kind of said there's a medical condition in it, in that voice note, but she didn't really explain what it is. And now, this man finding times where it's convenient for him not to have sex, not to be bothered about condoms, or maybe the medical condition he has, blah, blah, blah. So he finds a convenient time where he's not refusing sex, but it's not happening. So at the end of the day, you can't really accuse him of withholding sex. So now, there's manipulation and counter manipulation, or there's conditions and counter conditions in a way. So in a way, they're sort of they're matching in the energy that they're giving. If, for example, she knows the time it comes to bed and she's sleeping, and if she really wanted, for example, I'm not blaming her, but you could also work around it. Schedules Monday to Sunday, you can always schedule it.
I hear you. And I suppose the lesson here is, we shouldn't create an environment, or, those in a relationship should not create an environment where sex is difficult to have, and create these boundaries and put up these walls and then be surprised when it doesn't happen.
No, you shouldn't be surprised. I mean, it becomes axiomatic, right?
We've been speaking about using sex as a weapon in relationships. And my guest has been Elvis Munatswa, who's a co-founder of Urban Psychologists and Sexologist. Thank you so much for your time, Elvis.
Thank you for having me.
We really enjoyed this conversation. And we will be uploading it on the Prime Media Plus app, primemediaplus.com, and on YouTube.